Good evening, America. Welcome to Water Break. Today, Sunday, marks 21 years since 9/11, 2001. As kids' drag shows are on the rise across America, conservative values keep dipping lower and lower and lower. Conservatives used to have a problem with gay pride festivals, and now they only have a problem, apparently, with if it involves underage kids. That's where we're at now. Robert Bortons is going to join us this week, to discuss why you might not want to support education vouchers and ESA policies. So, as usual, grab your best scotch or Dr. Pepper and enjoy the show. First, do you like Jesus and beer? Well, then your family needs to come to the Fight Laugh Feast conference in Knoxville, Tennessee, October 6th through the 8th. The topic of this conference is lies, propaganda, storytelling, and the straight edge. Satan is the father of lies, and the mother of those lies is a government that has rejected God. Christians haven't been reading their Bibles, so we as a society are more susceptible than ever to Satan and his lies. So join us October 6th to the 8th as we fight, laugh, and feast with beer and psalms. Our amazing lineup of speakers, including Pastor Wilson, George Gilder, Pastor Toby, and more. And stuff for the kids too, like Jumpy Castles. We love that stuff. So sign up to attend. In fact, I need to schedule the Jumpy Castle. I haven't done that. I just read it on myself. So sign up to attend with you and yours, or become a vendor at fightlaughfeast.com. Also, so you can kind of come as a vendor too. So love to have you join us. We got some great announcements happening at that conference. Really excited to be there in October. Cannonball or belly flop? Okay. Today, as I mentioned already, marks 21 years since 9/11. There are now kids in college who never lived through 9/11. 9/11 was a big deal because it was a surprise attack on American civilians, using our own planes against us. It made America feel vulnerable. And Americans don't like that feeling. We have grown to like our comforts and to limit our risk. We prefer safety over liberty, as clearly seen in the pandemic that we just got through. And this is why President Bush signed the Patriot Act into law, which actually stands for uniting and strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. USA Patriot. That's actually the acronym. But there's nothing patriotic about this law. It created new government bureaucracies, including the Homeland Security, and it placed over 45,000 TSA agents in our airports for a daily dose of unlawful search and seizures. A conservative president did this, George Bush. And not only did he bring major industries under the socialistic surveillance state, like the airline industry, the worst outcome of all this that no one talks about was the National Prayer Service President Bush coordinated on September 14th, 2001, 3 days after the attack. A woman pastor presided over the service. A representative of the Muslim North America Society community prayed at the event. Jewish rabbis were present, and Billy Graham topped off that idolatrous worship service without calling our nation to repentance. I'm surprised they did not rise up and play after that service. More on that in a moment. This statement might be a stretch at the beginning, but man, bear with me just for a minute. You know how we like making big statements here. How we handled 9/11 has everything to do with the insurgence of gay pride festivals and kids' drag shows. It's a big statement. Why are conservative states allowing kid drag shows and gay pride festivals? Why do we have no immune system for discouraging this debauchery out of our states? The liberals are chasing conservatives, constantly chasing us out of their states, out of the big tech industry, out of the public spaces, silencing our free speech, and so forth. And we're unable to chase gay pride parades out of our cities? Something wrong there. Last Wednesday, I became aware that Boise was doing a gay pride festival, and that includes kids' drag show event ranging from ages 11 to 18 years old. Very bigoted of them not to include 10-year-olds. Why cut it off there? Well, while conservatives managed to create an uproar about this, we did, and to convince a number of the sponsors to back out, including Zions Bank, Idaho Power, and even our Health and Welfare Agency, which was pretty interesting. We are losing this cultural battle because we refuse to deal with the root of our societal problems. We refuse to declare that Jesus is Lord over Boise. and that God is not pleased with gay pride festivals and kids' drag shows in our public spaces. He's not. Make no mistake, Jesus is Lord over Boise, and as a city, the city, Boise should not encourage or allow debauchery in the city. It shouldn't. There's no neutrality. And either a city encourages truth, beauty, and goodness, or it'll eventually allow all forms of debauchery and licentious living in the public square. We have worshiped at the feet of neutrality. That's our God. That's Christians' God. And God hates that idolatry. Jesus is king and nothing's neutral. So why is 9/11 connected to gay pride festivals and kids' drag shows? That big statement, right? Well, throughout Scripture, idolatry is connected to massive forms of fornication, orgies, lusts, and abominations. Think of Israel and the golden calf. It was a synchronistic worship service where they did invoke God and they worshiped the golden calf. And then after they ate, they rose up and played. America has been invoking God for decades while mixing in all forms of idolatry, including neutrality that I'm talking about. And so we should not be surprised when our streets are full with all kinds of abominations. It shouldn't surprise us. We were worshiping idolatry before this happened. Practically speaking, there are a lot of political moves we should be making, and I'm all for working in politics, but fundamentally we need to chase out idolatry in our hearts, chase out idolatry in our churches, which will eventually translate to chasing out idolatry in our cities. But we have to understand that the gospel is a public gospel that applies not just to the church, but to the city of Boise. The Moscow play has been to build churches, build schools, and to build anti-fragile businesses. And when you do this, along the way, you will be constantly tempted to take some bait or to compromise in such a way as to undermine everything that you're fighting for. One of the current political plays that I'm sympathetic towards, and that I see a lot of danger. I see all sorts of dangers there, and it could become a kind of a shiny hook. You see the shininess, you bite into it, and it actually hooks you. Is the political play of ESA, Education Savings Accounts. Arizona was the first state to pass this policy, which will allow education money to follow the kids, effectively opening up the doors for dismantling the government education monopoly. So it might actually untangle some of the monopoly. But my guest, Robert Bortons, who's CEO of Classical Conversations. He's no stranger to our show and our network, and he's been fighting government education systems for decades. And he believes the ESA policy, the ESA political play, is a bad play. So, Robert, welcome to the show, man. Great to have you back on.
Gabe, thanks for having me. Appreciate you allowing me to come on and talk about this important subject, which I don't think is being addressed properly by either side.
Yeah, so we're wanting to fight the government monopoly on education, and the reason why that monopoly is largely there is because they actually can control the money. So in the midst of it's complicated. In the midst of this cultural battle, do you think education vouchers are a good temporary victory in all this?
I do not. So I'm reminded of Ronald Reagan when he said the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And apparently a lot of Republicans and conservatives have forgotten that. And really, government funding of education is a form of socialism. And this just expands socialism. Whoever holds the purse strings will dictate how it goes. And of course, you talked about idolatry. And this is really Christian idolatry of government funds, which we know right now the government is funding the LGBTQIA plus initiatives, and all the moral decay of the country has really come from government funding of education. And so this ESA money isn't a form of free market like they claim it is. It's really the government now paying and dictating the entire market. So they're taking eventually your freedoms away. So I don't think the follow the money idea is really catchy and it sounds good.
Right.
But it's really creating children who will have their entire lives paid for by the government, from free food to education. They're going to turn 18 and they're going to go to college and get that paid for. and then they're going to be 23 and ask, why isn't the government paying for my housing? Why don't we
Yeah.
have UBI? Why don't we have Medicare for all? And the conservatives are not going to have an answer for that, because you've just conditioned them for the last 18 to 22 years of their lives that the government should pay for all of these things. And so it's definitely not conservative. It's definitely not Christian, these ESA vouchers.
Now, it seems to me the money is a critical, it's a critical point of failure for the public schools. So if you figure out how to maybe disentangle some of the money, you actually are getting at a critical failure point for public education. So wouldn't that, taking away kind of the monopoly of how the funds are being distributed to public schools and allow it to follow the student, and then now the student can choose, well, I'm going to take my education money, instead of going to the public school, I'm going to go to the classical conversations or to the Christian school down the road. Do you not see the money as being able to kind of play with that critical failure point as a good thing?
Well, I think as a free market capitalist, I think that's a terrible thing, because it's socialism. I understand that argument, but you're not creating less public school students. You're creating more public school students. And so when you might sign up this first year and there might not be a lot of strings attached, but there's always issues down the road. And yeah, maybe you have conservative Christian legislators today. That doesn't mean you're not going to have, progressive LGBTQ legislators in the future. I mean, just look at all the ways that the government has used COVID to clamp down on private enterprise, to clamp down on colleges. Can they open? Can they not open? Hey, if you don't do this, you're not going to receive grants.
Right.
You see the fight in the federal government now over Title IX, and going to force colleges who take federal money to let boys use women's bathrooms.
Yep.
So with the money comes the power. And if you think of like the conservative mindset, typically small government, lower taxes. Well, if property taxes are now giving you $7,000 a year to educate your kid, are you ever going to ask the government to lower your property tax? Hell no, right? You're going to ask them to raise it. Yep. And so, yeah, you might get, the teachers unions might get weaker and those things in the short term, but in the long term, it's just going to create socialists out of all of us. We're all socialists now. Right. And, I think that's very dangerous. And the individuals pushing ESAs haven't thought about what this does to the child's mindsets, to the parents' mindsets over the long term, and what it's going to look like 10, 20 years from now. Right. To me, this is the progressives. This should be like the progressives should be championing this. I mean, every progressive dream that they have of how the United States should look like is now 20 years away from existence. They just got to hold out till these kids are voters and have spent, their entire lives being paid for by the government. Why should the government stop now?
I've actually seen a couple progressive teachers actually be in favor of this, public school teachers be in favor of this. So what's your plan? What's your proposal then? With millions of children involved in our government schools, what do you see as, an incremental way, or maybe sound policies kind of for ending government schools? I mean, like, government schools are so entangled in our culture, so I kind of like the bridge that ESA might provide, but what would you think of incremental play to run here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing to do is just what you talked about in your opening monologue. Like, as Christians, as our church, as business leaders, we need to be starting schools. We need to help people see that there's a different way, that you do not need socialism to educate your children, that you don't need a paper, an expensive piece of paper to get a job. I love that new Big Ed ad that New St. Andrews has out.
So good.
All of those things that we're fighting for on a daily basis. I mean, there's ACCS schools, there's classical conversations, there's private schools all around this country that are out there fighting this fight already, and you just need to join them. Like, find out, like, if you don't have any kids and you're a business owner, Call
Yeah.
that local private school and say,
That's right.
hey, do you guys take government money? No. Okay, I would love to provide, a scholarship. I would love to
Mhm.
figure out how to get more people in it, and then just let people know about it. I mean, we need to
Mhm.
get students out of the public school, lower our property taxes, and increase our
Yeah.
freedom. And it creates. We need to be a Christian mindset. We got to go, as Jesus said, that second mile. And as educators, as parents, as Christians, and really, we don't need to become welfare queens. And
Mhm.
the ESAs just make everyone welfare queens. And how are you going to argue against other forms of welfare when the conservatives are pushing this? I mean, think about how outraged all these people are about Joe Biden forgiving $10,000 of student debt,
That's right.
right?
Mhm.
Think about outrage. In Arizona, they're planning on giving every student $7,000 of forgiveness every single
That's right.
year from the
That's right.
taxpayer. Every year for 12 years of their lives, they're going to get student loan forgiveness of $7,000. So, I mean, why not? Like, we should be cheering on what Biden's doing. Why don't we just forgive all 2 trillion? That would be wonderful. But people haven't been asking the right questions, and they haven't been looking at it the right way because they hear people that they normally agree with pushing this
Mhm.
idea, but they haven't thought about it in the wide scope of things.
Robert Borton's causing problems since he was born, probably for his mother first, and now for ESA accounts. Thanks for coming on the show, Robert.
Thanks for having me.
So obviously, we know the connection between education and discipleship, and what this means for our culture. And here we are. I mean, I can't. I'm 40 years old. I was born in '79. I'm actually more than 40. And to hear of drag events in the public square, to hear of even gay pride parades when I was growing up in the '80s. I mean, it was discouraged. It wasn't looked upon in a positive manner. I want to bring Joseph back home on. You know, we are. It blows my mind that states like Idaho, states that are supposedly super conservative, 65% votes for a president, a conservative president here in Idaho. Why are conservative states, Joseph, allowing drag kid events in their cities?
Yeah, that's a good question. Good to see you, Gabe. And actually, listening to that last conversation with Robert, I wanted to jump in. You should arrange a debate for the two of us, because I would love to have a response to that. But another time, because I know we certainly share the goals there for education.
Yeah.
Why are conservative states allowing drag queens? Well, you got to define a lot of the terms. What does it mean to be conservative these days? And maybe the best analogy I can come up with, you remember those lava lamps? You're a child of the 80s.
Yeah.
Those lava lamps,
Yeah.
right? And there's these blobs in there, and they break apart, and then they break into small particles, and eventually they absorb back into one blob, right? That's how most people think, right or left. They're blob thinkers, which means they just get sucked into the largest mass around them inherently. The alternative to that is being like a rock thinker, where you have an anchor, and that you are committed to the ideas that some things are true, even if every single person around me disagrees with that and tells me that's not true. I know that some things are true. And that's, of course, the Christian worldview, and that's the rock, the anchor that our lives are anchored to. But that is a Christian thing. That is not a conservative liberal thing. There are people that I agree with on policy who just get there for very different reasons. That practically they're pragmatic. They just kind of have a libertarian streak. They like freedom, whatever that is. So we will reach the same conclusion on a lot of key issues. But ultimately, they are not anchored to something that is eternal, that they can go to and say, even if everybody disagrees with this is still true, that God is still correct. And I think that's what you're seeing in these so-called, conservative states, however you want to see that. And also, it's a function of the fact that these decisions are made locally, right? I mean, you might have a state that looks red and it's got blue areas, and you got a state that looks blue and it's got red areas. And so really this government is very local, and we honestly don't want a state or a federal government able to go in and tell parents what they're allowed to do with their kids in every case. We don't want that kind of micromanagement. The problem is the culture that would see a lot of parents who want to take their kids to a drag queen event, and there are other adults who want to watch children in a drag queen event. That's a much deeper problem to me.
Yeah, and I grant you, Boise is a liberal city. They actually have a Democrat mayor who supported the festival, or is supporting the festival. But even then, in our research and all this, so our Idaho's Health and Human Services department they pulled out of sponsoring, but come to find out, they'd actually been donating about $100,000 a year or so in various levels to the Boise Pride organization. And the Idaho Health and Human Services agency directly reports to Brad Little. Brad Little, it says Brad Little's directly responsible over this agency. And I know there's a lot of agencies that Brad's probably over, but here we are. We got conservative governors funding, these kind of events. And so I see little immune system in conservatives to even, resist the kind of shenanigans that are going on there.
And the reason is I think that people desperately want to be popular, and they'll see things that their gut tells them, oh, maybe that's not the best, but I don't want to fight. There's a difference between knowing what is right and the willingness to do what is right. And, even casting a vote in the privacy and safety of the ballot, booth, or, where if you fill out your kitchen tableware, that's a very different animal than seeing something in the culture, seeing something in your neighborhood, knowing that it's wrong and being willing to do something about it. It's a different level of courage. It's a different level of commitment to the ideas that we say we believe. And increasingly, even in places that are governed politically, in ways that we would say are more conservative, you still have a lot of people who are conservative kind of passively, and those who are willing to actually do something about harm that they see in their community. Progressivism, it's this gospel of tolerance. It operates much like the AIDS virus, right? The AIDS virus doesn't kill you. The AIDS virus destroys your immune system so that anything can kill you.
That's
and
right.
The gospel of tolerance has come in, and it's been so embedded in us, even the church, where we see it at such a high value that we've learned to not be judgmental or critical of anything, even things that are very destructive. And so it's destroyed our cultural immune system. And so we are now vulnerable to absolutely everything. So we've gotten to the point where adults could facilitate. I mean, literally every single adult in the community should see a child at a drag queen show and say, stop, start arresting people. But we have been so desensitized to bad things by this gospel of tolerance. We've been trained over decades of time not to be bothered by things that are very troubling.
Right. And what has struck me in all this, that desensitization thing is really important, is because one of the things that's struck me in all this is no conservatives really cared that much about there being a gay pride festival in downtown Boise. But once they found out that there were kids involved in drag shows, ages 11 to 18, that threw all the conservatives in a tizzy. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, conservatives would have had a problem with a gay pride festival. 20, probably more like 20 years ago. And now they don't have a problem with that. And now it's the kids that's getting them. The progressives have ran that kind of tolerance play on us, that AIDS, as you pointed out, on us in such a, it's working on us.
The Overton window has been shifted.
Yeah.
So, and if you had said, in 2012, when we were debating same-sex marriage, if social conservatives would have said, hey, if this happens, there's going to be kids in drag queen shows, everybody would have laughed hysterically about
That's right.
The slippery slope is so much slipperier than anyone dared to suggest, right? They couldn't have imagined this. But here we are, and now we're even, and if we see this, if we're exposed to it long enough, about 3 years from now, everybody will just kind of shrug to that too.
So what's the play here? What's the policy play? What's the political play that we do to get these things out of our cities and out of our states?
I don't know that this is a policy play. This is a cultural play. This is where you have to see leadership of people, because in their hearts, people know that this stuff is not right.
Yeah.
But what people are afraid to do is do something about it, to oppose it. And fear and courage are contagious. And the more people stand around and allow this stuff to happen, and they see nobody objecting, the more the observers of that scenario just say, well, I guess this is something that we tolerate. But if we see people pushing back and saying, no, not in my town, this cannot happen, people will say, actually, those guys are right. And the drag queen folks are wrong. I'm on that side, and they will see, yeah, we should oppose this. But to the extent that we just kind of sit around and allow things to happen, you're going to see more of it.
Joseph, thanks for contributing to Water Break, man. Really appreciate your insight on this. You're all dressed nice for another show, so go at it.
My pleasure. Thanks, Gabe. Good to see you.
Yeah. So I want to bring Jacob Daniels in, and actually, as I was kind of putting my questions together for Jacob around the topic of the show today, one of the questions that popped in my mind was, what are your thoughts on 9/11? Where were you in 9/11? And do you, did it have, does it have any memory in your mind? Did it strike you? What are your thoughts on 9/11? Where were you and so forth?
Good to see you, Gabe. I remember I was in India at that moment when it happened. There were many sympathizers in India with America and what happened here, because we had a common enemy to fight. However, with time now, what I'm seeing is that through a revisionist idea of history and events that went about, people are becoming more equally sympathetic to the ideology that led to the tragedy. One of the facts for that is that India is the second largest Muslim populated countries in the world.
Wow.
Not saying that all Muslims would celebrate 9/11, but there are some who would not even condemn it. So I remember being there, and it was part of the news, and we could see that something had shifted in human history, and this would also impact India. But let me say this one thing, and I would slightly differ from you when you said that this was a surprise attack. I don't think so. What I want to share is that prior to 9/11, countries like India and some other nations were already facing existential threat because of Islamic terrorism, and they've been warning America. But sadly, it took 9/11 to wake it up. And similarly, what I'm seeing today in America is that we are facing ideological threat. I think it was Joseph who said that, was it Robert who said that we are, just becoming more rigid in terms of our understanding of what the culture is doing. But what I'm saying is that the America is becoming more like a Hindu nation now. There is an existential threat that it is facing. And what I'm seeing is that people are kind of like indifferent to these ideologies until it hits them personally. Yeah. And that's very tragic and sometimes too late.
And so is that what you mean by becoming a Hindu nation, where we're indifferent to an ideology until we get robbed, or until is that characterizes what a Hindu nation would kind of feel about these kind of things, or how to view these things?
So what's happening is that Romans 8, when we read about the difference between creation and creator, what's happening now is that the Western framework is built on this foundation now. That's what's happening over the past decades, is that we have adopted this idea of oneism, that the ultimate reality is one. So you have to remove all kinds of distinctions, distinctions about gender, distinctions about what is right and wrong. We've become so relativistic about truth that we agree with a lot of tendencies that we would have considered as deviant in the past.
So how does this play into kind of the drag show gay pride public displays in cities like Boise and across the nation?
I think what has happened is that culturally we have internalized the idea that identity is somehow created by us rather than it is being given to us by our maker. So what has happened through that is that we have moved from recognizing God's affirmation of our identity to seeking man's affirmation of it.
That's right.
And who doesn't like some affirmation, right? So public demonstrations like the one that we are seeing in Boise are merely, I believe, an expression of seeking that affirmation. It is an attempt to manufacture a plausibility structure that will normalize what they call pride. So let me give you one example. As it is sad that in the church that we believe that, say, if we are playing a basketball game, we believe that God has control on the player, but it is the devil who decides what the rules are and who the referee is.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem is. What we are seeing is out in public has been happening within the classroom for decades. The church has capitulated to it mostly by leaving their gates unguarded. And what we are doing is nothing new. I think we are flirting with the age-old idea of becoming like God,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that people sitting in the pew somehow remain untouched by such temptations, and that's dangerous. I think culturally we have been categorized to think that we are inseparable part of ultimate reality, and that's the Hindu idea I was talking about. The distinction between creator and creation has been removed.
Mm-hmm.
And to a degenerate soul, this is an empowering idea, that any distinctions are removed, because if there are no distinctions, there are no boundaries, anything goes. And
Mm-hmm.
guess what? Empowered people seek power, and they have positioned themselves in the places of influence, even within the church leadership, sadly. And they've been communicating narrative through sermons and songs that affirm their deviation rather than bringing them in obedience to God's law.
So, would you argue that the homosexual apologetic is winning because it's casting a vision for you can create your own identity? It's kind of feeding that desire to your own emotions, of who you are, your own identity, as opposed to getting your identity from Christ. And so the homosexual apologetic, whether you don't need to even call it a homosexual apologetic, it's like kind of like the modern apologetic, is you create your own identity, and that's more attractive than reporting to God for your identity.
If we remove God as being the sole source of truth, then there is no place for revelation. And when there is no place for revelation, we go after our own feelings and ideas. And I think Carl Trueman talks about it very clearly in his book, The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. He talks about expressive individualism, and that has become the liturgy of our time, where people are praising themselves. And I also talk about it's more like a therapeutic system that emphasizes on the importance of selfism instead of. So what happened was we moved from theism to deism, and from deism to selfism. And we have abandoned mind that seeks reason. And what we are doing is, in doing that, is we are emphasizing personal preferences, which gets validated by lived experiences. The truth is that sinners do not justify their sin with something righteous. We have to understand that. They always appeal to another sin to justify it. And what's happening in our culture is that we have sinful tendencies, and we are justifying it by lived experiences. And by shutting down the minds of our young people, especially in the school over decades,
That's right.
Telling them that they could be whatever they want to be. Even in the church we are doing, even in the Christian families we are doing that. Yeah. Guess what? A sinful person is wanting to be like God, their idea of God. And we are currently seeing a result of our flirtation with a God called pride.
Jacob, thank you for all your contributions to Water Break, man. Keep it up. Appreciate you very much. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Man, this is a kind of a heavy show. And so we always like to end the show on a lighter note. And that's why weekly we need to bring you news that only John Branyan can trust, because that is the news that only you can trust. If John Branyan can't trust it, you can't trust it. And John, you're the man. Apparently you're the most trustworthy journalist here in the U.S.
I'm the most trustworthy journalist on Water Break, apparently.
Which is in the U.S.
If we like beer and Jesus, we should come to the conference in October.
Yeah, you like that?
I do like that. What if I know somebody who only likes beer? Should I bring them to the conference and try to?
Well, because hopefully they'll find Jesus, but they can only have one or two beers though. it might sour their presence.
If they're willing to tolerate Jesus for the beer, can I still bring them?
100%.
Okay.
Especially if they're paying.
Well, yeah, that goes without saying.
So news that John Branyan can trust. What is going on out there, John, that we need to know about?
So many things, Gabe. I'm glad you asked. Tennis player Hugo Humbert was playing at Wimbledon a couple of months ago. Wimbledon. And forgot to bring his tennis racket.
Okay.
The dude forgot to bring his tennis racket. He did, however, remember his wallet, to lock the front door and turn off the oven. And so I think we need to give him credit for that, right? I mean,
he left the home well. It was when he got there, The most famous, my son is 8 years old. That's something he would do. He'd go to the football game and forget his football helmet.
Right. He's playing in Wimbledon, right? We can
Yeah.
forgive him for that. He's a little distracted. He can't
Yeah.
remember everything.
No,
But-
especially his important tennis racket.
Right.
So what did he do? Did he go back home, or did he
No, they had some people that brought him some rackets, but
brought him?
that's it would be embarrassing, I would think, to have to say to the ref,
I would think so. Hey ref, forgot my racket, man.
yeah, I don't have my racket
He
here.
talked
at
just like that. He's like, I forgot my racket, man. Come on,
I don't
ref.
have my racket at Wimbledon. That's the thing. We're at Wimbledon.
That's great.
Actress Jennifer Lawrence recently was commenting. She said that she's been trying to heal, quote unquote, after feuding with her family over politics, and said that she has recurring nightmares about Tucker Carlson. Those have been the discussion between her and her therapist, evidently. She's
Yeah.
having dreams about Tucker Carlson. Now, here's the thing that was interesting, I thought. In her
Okay.
dream, she owned 7 skinny cows, and Tucker Carlson's big fat cows came and ate them up.
Did
What
you
was that?
did you also see there was this meme, I actually shared it, going around her having nightmares from Tucker Carlson, and then standing warm and cozy next to Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein. I actually
Yeah.
had a comment about that, but I decided not to use it because I thought it was over the edge for this show, and then you brought it up. So
I'll one up you, John.
I'm making a note for the next time. It's like Harvey Weinstein is not out of bounds on Water Break.
No, not at all. And
I think
there's
her therapist-
there's no nightmares from Harvey. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, no kidding. Her therapist has suggested that she could end her Tucker Carlson dreams by papering her bedroom with pictures of Lindsey Graham
Or Mitch McConnell.
or Harvey Weinstein. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Here's the thing, Gabe. Former Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. Do you remember her?
Yeah.
You remember Hillary Clinton? Has answered speculations about her 2024 White House bid. And she says that she's never going to run for president again. Did you hear that?
Did she really? Was that her real response?
Yeah, she says she's never going to run for president again. However, she will continue her plans to destroy the republic and install herself as supreme ruler of the earth. She says, I have no ambition to be president. What I want to be is a demigod.
Oh man. But the sad thing is Epstein's dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the sad one. That's the sad one there.
That's the sad one. California, you've heard of that?
Well,
The country's most populous state and the center of U.S. car culture is banning the sale of new gasoline-powered vehicles starting in 2035. I think you've
incredible. Incredible.
marking a historic step in the state's battle against climate change. Now, in preparation, citizens of the state are weaning themselves from the need to go anywhere. A Los Angeles resident has explained, I'm playing more video games, I'm watching a lot more movies. Right now, I'm still leaving my room to buy food sometimes, but I'm willing to give that up, willing to give up food and contact with other humans
Incredible.
if it means saving the planet. That's how they are in California.
Incredible.
Now, when asked how it is planning to respond to the ban, the climate said, it's not going to affect me at all.
Nope. Did you see the Tesla car that was carrying a generator, a gas generator on it, and then that's how it was charging the car? Start up the gas generator and charge the car because of the grid right now and all the rolling blackouts that they're trying to prevent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
I didn't see that picture, but that makes a lot of sense to me.
It does. One of the real facts here, that all we're doing is we're giving the government more ways of controlling our freedoms, the freedom to even move around in big cities. It's incredible to me that we're just handing over these freedoms You know, now the government's got this whole grid that can control you.
Well, we're doing it because the government's going to keep us safe.
Yeah, that's right.
I got one last little tidbit here.
This is a John Brand you can trust. Let's bring it.
Yeah, one last little bit here. Housing prices. This is also California related. It's San Francisco. Housing prices in San Francisco are skyrocketing. Have been for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And the Milpitas Unified School District is asking parents to rent a room to school teachers. That's a real thing that they're asking the parents of the children to rent a room, an affordable room, to the teachers, because the teachers can't afford to stay in the district because housing prices are too high.
Right.
Now, apparently this is going to be a temporary move, since by 2035, they're expecting that teachers will be able to live in one of the abandoned cars that's littering the road.
that won't recharge.
Right. One of the gasoline cars. There'll be millions of them scattered all over the road in California.
Oh man. You know, just a school bus, a gasoline school bus, just convert that into, a lot of people are doing that now these days.
Yeah. So
take out all the chairs, put a mattress in it.
Yeah. Or a pile of hemp. You just sleep in a pile of hemp, school bus.
That'd be too tempting though for them though. They'd want to smoke their mattress. Just that wasn't a very good solution there for San Francisco, John.
That's the best I could do off the top of my head.
It'd be like me turning my bed into ice cream. Like it just wouldn't last. It's just I couldn't just sleep on it. I'd have to eat it.
Can you imagine having sweet dreams of Tucker Carlson on a bed of ice cream?
Oh, those would be good dreams. Good dreams. John, you're going to be at the Fight Laugh Feast conference.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah, you're going to be doing there's a little bit that you're going to be working on for the Sabbath feast.
Yep, we're doing some original comedy that's never been done before.
Uh-huh.
And we've got a couple of things planned, Gabe. We're going to play some musical games.
Ooh,
I think.
I'm excited. Well, that's great. Well, we're like a month away. I can't tell you all the things that are breaking over here, so just be praying that everything goes smooth.
Okay.
It's how God wants it to be. It's just like things just start breaking as you get closer to needing to follow through.
That's how he tests faith, isn't it?
That's right. Amen. It's happened every year. I mean, the first year we did, I got arrested 3 weeks before the conference, and that broke all sorts of things. And we had to move to a new event center. So every year stuff like this happens, and it's a blast. God blesses it, and it comes through, and it ends up being a great conference. So,
yep, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, John. Thank you, man. News that John Branyan can trust. That's it.
Peace.
It's good to end on a lighter note. I really think when we look at 9/11 and what happened, I know some of you, if you're 21 or younger, you never kind of walked through 9/11. But the thing that struck me the most about 9/11 was that idolatrous worship service. My pastor, Doug Wilson, had to point that out to me. I didn't see it. We had the towers fall down. 3 days later, we have an idolatrous worship service. And our response to the tragedy, our response to what happened and all those people dying, is we organized, our country, our president organized an idolatrous worship service. That was our response. Instead of lamentation, instead of mourning for those who died, we went right at it and put an idolatrous worship service together, giving God kind of the middle finger. Look, we aren't listening. We aren't learning from what just happened. So as you organize your family, your life, and what you guys are doing, I mean, the play is really important. Build your churches. Build your church community. Get right with God there. Build your family. Build anti-fragile businesses in such a way where we're freeing ourselves from all the government. Robert Borton's made a very good point. If you take ESA money, now you're conditioning yourself. You are all socialists now. We're all getting student forgiveness now. And so we need to structure our lives in such a way where we're seeing how these things creep into our lives. how these hooks can come in, how these levers can come into our lives. And that's why I really like the terminology anti-fragile. Anti-fragile. Create your life, your church, your business, your family in such a way where you're anti-fragile, regardless of what the government does in the years to come. So with that said, thank you for joining Water Break. Until next Sunday, go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Waterboy with the Water Break.
Hi, I'm Robert Borton, CEO of Classical Conversations. Our most precious commodity is time. No one has ever lied on their deathbed wishing they had spent more time making money. They all wish they had spent more time creating a legacy. Our modern education system steals that legacy, steals that time from our children. That's why I'm passionate about homeschooling. That's why at Classical Conversations we want to give you more time to create that legacy, follow your passions, and glorify God. Visit classicalconversations.com for more information.
This is where Dave and I plan this year's company holidays.
Let's go through the list.
Easter.
Too religious.
St. Patrick's Day?
Too white.
Mother's Day.
Way too cisgendered.
All of your usual holidays have been canceled this year.
But we still have Karl Marx's birthday!
Need a real reason to party? Find a new job at redballoon.work.